My child. Pause here. Do not let your hand move past this message, because something has been trying to reach your heart through the silence, through the restless moments, and through the strange heaviness you have felt without knowing why. What you are about to hear did not arrive by accident. There is a soul connected to yours who has been holding back words for far too long, and tonight, those words have become too heavy to carry. Your soulmate is in tears, not because they have stopped caring, not because they have chosen to forget you, but because the truth they buried is now rising to the surface, and they are terrified that you may never hear it. They are begging you to listen, even though their voice may not yet be standing before you. Their heart is speaking in ways that distance cannot silence. Somewhere beneath their pride, beneath the confusion, beneath everything they pretended was fine, they are asking for one moment of your attention. They know they may not deserve it. They know they may have waited too long. Yet there is something they need you to understand before the next chapter begins, because once this truth is revealed, you will see their actions, their silence, and even their absence differently. Stay with these words, because the first thing heaven wants you to know is that their tears did not begin today. They began quietly, in moments no one witnessed. They began in the middle of ordinary conversations when someone mentioned something that reminded them of you. They began late at night when the world grew still and there was nowhere left to hide from memory. They began each time they opened your name, looked at your picture, remembered your voice, and then closed everything before courage could become action. They told themselves they were protecting you by staying away. They convinced themselves that silence was kinder than uncertainty. They believed that if they disappeared long enough, their feelings would eventually become smaller. But instead, the opposite happened. Every day they avoided the truth, it grew stronger. Every unsent message became another weight upon their heart. Every time they pretended not to care, something inside them fractured a little more. And now they are crying because they have finally understood what their silence cost. You may have wondered why someone who felt so deeply could behave so distantly. You may have replayed conversations, searched for hidden meanings, and blamed yourself for moments you could not explain. You may have asked whether you imagined the connection, whether the tenderness was real, or whether your heart created a story because it wanted something beautiful to believe in. But listen carefully, you did not imagine everything. There were emotions between you that were never given the chance to fully speak. The connection frightened them because it reached parts of them they had spent years keeping guarded. You did not simply attract their attention. You awakened something. Around you, they felt seen in a way that was both comforting and terrifying. They sensed that you could recognize the sadness behind their smile, the fear behind their confidence, and the loneliness hidden beneath their independence. They wanted to move closer, but moving closer meant becoming honest, and honesty would have required them to reveal a truth they were not ready to face. That truth is part of why they are begging you to listen now. There was a moment when they almost told you everything. You may not have recognized it when it happened. It may have looked like an ordinary pause, an unfinished sentence, a strange change in their expression, or a conversation that suddenly turned serious before they pulled away. In that moment, their heart was at the edge of confession. They wanted to tell you what they felt. They wanted to explain what had been happening behind the scenes. They wanted to ask whether there was still a place for them in your life. But fear interrupted them. They began imagining every possible rejection. They imagined you laughing, turning away, or telling them it was too late. They imagined opening their heart only to discover that you had already closed yours. And because they feared losing the possibility of you, they chose the very silence that slowly created that loss. This is the contradiction that has been destroying their peace. They stayed silent because they were afraid of losing you, yet that silence pushed you farther away. They acted as though they needed nothing because they were afraid of needing you too much. They pretended to be unaffected because the truth was far more vulnerable. Your presence mattered to them more than they knew how to admit. But there is more. Someone close to them noticed the change. This person saw how your soulmate became quiet whenever your name appeared. They noticed the distant look in their eyes, the way their mood shifted without warning, and the way they defended you even when they claimed they had moved on. At first, your soulmate denied everything. They said it was over. They said they were fine. They insisted that the past belonged in the past. The person listening did not believe them. They asked one simple question: if you are truly over them, why does their name still change your face? Your soulmate had no answer. That question followed them for days. It appeared when they were alone, when they tried to sleep, and when they attempted to distract themselves. They realized that they had become skilled at convincing others, but they had never convinced their own heart. They could create distance. They could avoid contact. They could hide behind responsibilities and distractions. But they could not erase what they felt. Then something happened that broke the final layer of their resistance. They heard something about you. It was not necessarily something dramatic. It may have been a small update, a passing comment, or a glimpse of how your life was changing without them. But whatever reached them carried one painful realization: you were not standing still. You were growing, healing, and moving toward a future that might no longer include them. That realization shook them more deeply than they expected. For the first time, they pictured a life in which someone else learned the sound of your laughter, understood your quiet moods, celebrated your dreams, and stood beside you during the moments your soulmate had once imagined sharing. They pictured someone else receiving the love they were too afraid to accept. And suddenly, all their excuses became painfully small. They cried because they realized that love does not always wait forever for courage to arrive. They cried because they had assumed there would always be another chance. They cried because somewhere in the deepest place of their heart, they had believed that your connection would remain untouched no matter how long they delayed. But your heart has been changing too. Heaven has seen what you endured while they remained silent. You carried questions that were never yours to carry. You questioned your worth because someone else lacked the courage to communicate. You wondered whether you had been too open, too loving, too patient, or somehow not enough. There were nights when you tried to detach, yet part of you still felt the unfinished energy between you. You wanted peace, but the absence of truth kept leaving the door slightly open. Hear this clearly: their inability to speak was never proof that you were unworthy of love. Their confusion was not a measurement of your value. Their fear came from wounds that existed long before you entered their life. You touched those wounds without intending to, simply because genuine love exposes the places where a person still believes they are undeserving. Your soulmate has been fighting an old belief. Somewhere in their past, they learned that love could disappear without warning. They learned that vulnerability could be used against them. They learned to leave emotionally before anyone else had the chance to abandon them. So when they began feeling something real for you, their instincts did not tell them to embrace it. Their instincts told them to escape. But the heart does not always obey the habits built by fear. The more they tried to leave you behind, the more clearly they saw what made you different. You did not merely admire the version of them that appeared strong. You sensed the person beneath the armor. You did not demand perfection. You noticed effort. You did not love only their light. Somehow, you made space for their uncertainty too. That is why forgetting you has been impossible. They have compared other conversations to the ones they had with you. They have noticed how empty certain rooms feel, even when filled with people. They have experienced moments that should have made them happy, only to realize that a part of their happiness was missing because they could not share it with you. They have smiled in public and then become silent when alone because the one person they wanted to speak with was the person they had pushed away. Now their tears are carrying a confession they can no longer deny. They miss you. Not only your face. Not only your voice. They miss the feeling of being understood without having to explain every hidden part of themselves. They miss the calm they experienced near you, even when they pretended your presence made them nervous. They miss the way you challenged them to become more honest. They miss the version of themselves that existed when hope was still alive between you. Yet what they are begging you to hear is deeper than, "I miss you." They want you to know that they regret making you feel replaceable. They regret the times they gave you mixed signals, drew close, then disappeared. They regret allowing pride to speak louder than affection. They regret every moment when you needed clarity and received silence instead. They regret thinking they could return whenever they were ready without considering how deeply their absence might change you. They know you may have built walls now. They know you may no longer trust words alone. They know that even if they finally speak, their confession cannot erase the loneliness you experienced. And this is where their tears become different. They are no longer crying only because they miss you. They are crying because they understand your pain. For a long time, they focused only on their fear. They asked, "What if I get hurt?" They did not fully ask, "What if my fear hurts the person I love?" But now the answer is standing before them. Their avoidance had consequences. Their silence left scars. Their hesitation forced you to heal without the closure you deserved. This realization has humbled them. They are no longer approaching the thought of you with the same pride. They are no longer imagining that one emotional message will repair everything. Something inside them has changed. They know that if they are ever given the chance to return, they must return differently. Not with beautiful promises and temporary passion, but with honesty, consistency, and the willingness to remain present when vulnerability becomes uncomfortable. But before that can happen, another truth must be revealed. Your soulmate has been carrying a secret fear about you. It is not that they believe you are unlovable. It is the opposite. They believe you may finally understand how deeply you deserve to be loved, and when you do, you may realize that they did not give you enough. This fear has intensified recently. They can sense that you are no longer begging life to restore what broke you. You are becoming quieter, stronger, and more discerning. Your energy has changed. You may still care, but you are no longer willing to lose yourself while waiting for someone else to become ready. They feel this shift, even from a distance. That is why the urgency is rising. There is a window closing, not because heaven is punishing them, but because your soul is moving toward alignment. You are entering a season where confusion will no longer feel romantic. Inconsistency will no longer feel mysterious. Silence will no longer be mistaken for depth. You are learning that real love does not require you to abandon your peace in order to prove your devotion. Your soulmate knows this, and it terrifies them. They fear they may arrive with the truth after you have already chosen peace over possibility. But listen, this message is not asking you to chase them. It is not asking you to ignore your boundaries, forget your pain, or accept less than you deserve. Heaven does not reveal someone's tears to make you responsible for rescuing them. Their healing is their responsibility. Their courage must come from within. Their transformation must be proven through action. This message has found you so that you can understand what was hidden without becoming trapped by it. You are allowed to care and still protect your heart. You are allowed to forgive and still require change. You are allowed to listen without immediately opening every door. You are allowed to love someone and still ask whether their presence brings peace or confusion. Your soulmate's tears are real, but your healing is real too. There is something powerful happening between these two truths. Their heart is awakening at the same moment yours is becoming stronger. They are finally ready to admit what you once wished to hear, while you are finally learning not to depend on hearing it. This is not an accident. This is the turning point. The universe of your emotions is rearranging itself. Old roles are changing. You are no longer the one endlessly wondering while they remain comfortably silent. Now they are the one wondering whether they still have a chance, while you are learning to stand securely within your own worth. They have rehearsed apologies in their mind, deleted messages, rewritten confessions, and searched for words powerful enough to explain why they behaved in ways that contradicted their feelings. But no sentence feels sufficient. How can they explain that they loved you and feared you at the same time? How can they admit that your kindness made them feel safe, yet safety itself felt unfamiliar? How can they tell you that they left not because the connection was weak, but because it was stronger than anything they knew how to control? How can they ask for another chance without dishonoring the pain caused by the first one? These questions are keeping them awake. Still, beneath all those questions, there is one sentence they know they must eventually say: I should have trusted what I felt with you. Those words are closer to being spoken than you realize. But something unexpected is delaying them. There is a person, circumstance, or unfinished responsibility in their life that has complicated their decision. Your soulmate has not been completely free inside themselves. Part of them has felt tied to an expectation, an old promise, a family pressure, or a situation they believed they had to endure. They thought resolving it quietly would protect everyone involved. Instead, it created more confusion. Now that situation is reaching a breaking point. Your soulmate has been forced to choose between continuing a life that looks acceptable from the outside and becoming honest about what their heart truly wants. This choice has caused the tears you are sensing. They know that choosing honesty may disappoint people. It may change relationships. It may expose truths they have hidden for a long time. But continuing the lie is becoming impossible. Someone recently confronted them about this. The conversation was intense, but not cruel. They were asked why they kept sacrificing their happiness to maintain appearances. They were asked why they spoke about loyalty while betraying their own heart. They were asked whether fear had become more important to them than love. Your soulmate tried to defend their choices, but their voice weakened. Then the person said something that shattered them: "You are not protecting anyone. You are only delaying the pain." Those words opened everything. Your soulmate walked away from that conversation carrying a truth they could no longer escape. Every delay had created deeper consequences. Every attempt to avoid discomfort had expanded it. And every day they remained silent with you made the eventual truth harder to speak. That night, they cried harder than they had in a long time. They whispered your name. They remembered the last moment when honesty was possible. They remembered something you said. Perhaps a simple sentence, perhaps a look in your eyes, that once made them believe you would have understood. They wondered how different everything might be if they had chosen courage then. But regret is not the final chapter. Something new is forming within them. The tears are washing away the illusion that they can keep living divided between what they show and what they feel. They are beginning to understand that love without courage becomes a silent prison. They are tired of living inside it. They want to reach you. They want to ask you to listen without interruption, just once, while they explain the whole story. They want to tell you what happened after they walked away. They want to reveal who influenced their decisions, what fear controlled them, and why they believed distance was necessary. Most of all, they want to tell you about the promise they made concerning you, a promise you were never supposed to discover. Yes, there was a promise. It was made during a moment of emotional pressure. Your soulmate agreed to something because they believed it would prevent greater conflict. At the time, they convinced themselves that the promise was temporary, that they would eventually find a way to break free without hurting anyone. But the promise involved their contact with you. It influenced their silence. It may even explain why they disappeared at the exact moment the connection between you seemed ready to deepen. They have carried guilt about this ever since. Now the person connected to that promise has returned to demand something more, and your soulmate has finally reached the point where they cannot comply. For the first time, they are preparing to reveal the truth, even if it changes everything around them. This is why their heart is crying out for you to listen. They know the next decision could either free them or close the door between you permanently. They know there is no longer room for half-truths. And they know that once they tell you what the promise truly was, you will finally understand why they looked at you with love while walking away as though they felt nothing. But before they can speak, one final event must unfold. A message has already been written. Your name is at the beginning. Their apology is in the middle. And at the very end, they have included the secret they swore they would never reveal. Their finger has hovered over the button more than once. Each time, fear stopped them. But tonight, something has changed, because the person who demanded their silence has just discovered that the message exists, and what happens next will determine whether that confession reaches you at all.